This is our third and final part of section 2.3 on congruent segments. We're going to use this number line, which we've seen before. We've filled in these coordinates before. We're counting by ones. We're going to find the midpoint of these segments. So remember, midpoint, finding them is as simple as averaging. So if you know how to average two numbers, you know how to find the midpoint of a segment. You want the midpoint of segment EI. I think you can tell just by looking at it that it's 0 would be the coordinate. The midpoint would be point G. Okay, so mathematically what we would be doing, if you couldn't figure that out, or if this was a tougher problem, you take the two coordinates of the endpoints, and you add them together, and then you divide by 2. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0, and 0 divided by 2 is 0. This is the coordinate of the midpoint. That's the number. Now, they wanted you to find the midpoint, which is a letter. Remember, a point is a letter. So this is your answer. But this is the math that kind of leads you to the answer. Segment AG, what would its midpoint be? So we're looking at -6 as one of the coordinates, 0 as the other coordinate. We're adding them, dividing by 2. -6 plus 0 is -6, divided by 2 gives you -3. This is the coordinate of the midpoint. This is not your answer. Okay, so that lives right here. What's the name of that point? Point D. Segment ME. I'm putting -6. I don't know why. See if I can fix that. It's a +6. E lives at -2. Maybe that's why I put the negative there. Anyways, you want to average those two numbers. -2 plus 6 is 4. 4 divided by 2 is 2. That's the coordinate of your midpoint. The midpoint is point I. We'll do one more. Find the midpoint for segment FN. F lives at -1. N lives at +7. We're going to average those. What comes directly in between a -1 and a +7? Three does. -1 plus 7 is 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So J would be your midpoint. We talked about this last time. This is a tougher example. It's got a star beside it. Probably means you might see this on an assessment at some point. We have 3 segments here, 2 little ones, and then the big one. They're telling you that C is the midpoint. And that's really, really important. Because if it's the midpoint, then we know that these 2 segments are congruent. And notice how I put matching slash marks on these segments? That indicates that the segments are congruent on a diagram. So, segment AC is congruent to segment CB. We know that because it told us that C was the midpoint, and this is what it means. It means you're going to get congruent segments. Now, if you have congruent segments, That means your segment lengths are equal. So this length and this length, even though we don't know what they are, we know they're the same. So you can substitute, like we talked about last section. From A to C is 2x. From C to B is 5x minus 6. We transitioned from geometry to algebra. We just need to solve the equation. Remember, you can do whatever you want to either side, as long as you do it to the other side too. So we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. That way we can get all of our x's on the left. So 2x minus 5x gives you a negative 3x. We're left with a negative 6 on the right side. You want to get x by itself. So we're going to divide by negative 3. That way those negative 3's cancel. Negative 6 divided by negative 3 gives you positive 2. So that's our x value. That's our mystery number. Now, if x is 2, this is read 2 times x. 2 times 2 is 4. That's how far it is from A to C. 4. How far is it from C to B? That's what they're asking here. 5 times 2 is 10. Minus 6 is 4. Now, if you stop for a second and you think about this, if C was the midpoint, shouldn't these two lengths be the same? Absolutely. So if you ever solve for these and they aren't equal, you know you messed up if it has the word midpoint in there. Okay, one more question. How far is it from A to B? Little segment plus little segment gives you the big one. 4 plus 4 is 8.